choose items to go over with everyone who's joining us from Zoom. Do you want to bring up the slide, Jill? That's ready. So just a few reminders. If you want to address the board during the public forum section of our agenda, which is item number 7, you can definitely do that, and you would have up to 3 minutes to address us. And you use the chat function in Zoom to let Jill know that you want to speak. Are they seeing?
They can see it.
They can? Okay. And a few uses that chat is intended for is to help with technical issues. So if there's something, if you're not hearing us, or if something you're not seeing something, let the host know, use chat that way. Sign up for addressing the board via chat. Chat is not intended to ask questions or engage with our host or those in the physical room together. So if you could avoid using chat for questions, that would be helpful. If you do have questions along the way, feel free to email the school district, the principal or administrator of the building where your student is, or our superintendent, and any questions that arise during the meeting can be answered after the meeting is done. But again, chat is not intended for a Q&A during the meeting itself. So I think I covered what we want. And again, thank you for paying attention and being present in our meeting tonight. Moving on to item 2. Public forum. So if we do have anybody who wants to address the board and you're here in the room with us, there is a sign-in sheet over there by the entrance and a visitor guest book as well. And I don't have any announcements. Do we have any announcements for the good of the meeting? Okay. Moving on to presentations. So first is JFK leadership, and I think we have. So when you address us, you can come and sit in that chair right there, because okay, introduce yourself, and we have you do that because this is the box that picks up the sound for those in Zoom.
Yep. Okay. My name's Alex Geschwell. I'm the vice president of ASB and the president of our FFA. So I have the announcements today. So to start with sports, they had a home track meet last week, and it sounds like it was really successful. A lot of the students PR'd. Softball has a game tonight, and baseball, I think it's going later this week. They're working on catching up games after the weather abruptly changed. Moving on to committees and clubs. Prom is starting to sell prom tickets this week. A lot of students are really excited that they get to be back in person for dances. And then ASB is working on bringing back Mr. JFK, which those proceeds from that night will go to Dornbeckers. And then Habitat for Humanity is going to either do a dinner or a bake sale before, and those proceeds will go directly to the Habitat for Humanity Fund. FFA is also having their end of the year banquet on May 26th. They're looking to give out Green Hand Awards for freshmen and past freshman students who couldn't get their Green Hand due to COVID and not being able to have that ceremony. And then an awards banquet to celebrate everything people have accomplished over the years.
Wonderful.
So that's what I have.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Do you have questions for Alex? Thank you very much for being here tonight. Lots going on at our high school. And is Moffitt?
He is not. He is at a conference. So
I should say Mr. Moffitt. Is Mr. Moffitt here?
The sports conference, and is not available this evening.
All right. So we'll skip that agenda item and move on to approving the agenda. So the agenda is good, the one in front of us, I'm assuming. Yep. So if someone wants to make a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
Andy, I'll give the second
Sorry.
to Andy. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. I'm going to move back to sports report. I just heard from the field. Softball won 6-1. That's the score report. So FYI.
Sports report.
Yes, that's the sports report. Okay, moving on to consent agenda items. You see what's in front of us. Does any board member need to remove anything from our consent items this time? I would feel the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I move that we approve the consent items as presented.
Second.
Mark seconds, been moved and seconded. I'm just going to say as discussion, I'm going to call out a resignation because our administrators are in the hot seat in front of us and engage with us a lot, I'm just gonna call out a resignation for Mr. Ticky and just thank you for your service to our school district. And I know you have a different position and I wish you well in that. So just wanted to call that out. Yeah,
Been a pleasure.
thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, passes. Reports. So if we have any presidents of our employees who would like to address the board tonight, you sure can. Okay, and administrators reports. So, right. First, Mrs. Winslow's first.
All right, good evening. Let's see here. So as always, we're checking in on our attendance rates. Our overall attendance is holding steady, right close to 92%. But our regular attenders is about 69%, but it is rising. So that's good news. We've got kiddos who are, may have had some hiccups along the way, but are holding steady and doing their best to recover. In March, we did have a family book club that we did. All students in the school received a copy of James and the Giant Peach. That was great. We had some trivia around that. Different staff members read chapters of the book and we put them on the school YouTube channel. And so that was good fun. This Thursday is our kindergarten roundup. We're reaching out to our local preschools. We're also advertising on social media, that kind of thing. So trying to get the word out to all of our families. And one thing that was not on there was that our spring conference attendance rate was 91%. So that was a quite high attendance rate for spring conferences. And we're really excited to have our families back in our building.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Jasmine tonight? Thank you. And I think the book club, what a great idea.
It was super fun.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
All right.
Vicky.
I get to be next. Well, like Jasmine said, to start off, just giving you guys a little bit of an attendance update. We've stayed pretty consistent all year with regular attenders being right up around that between 72 and 74% mark, and overall attendance, you guys see it broken down by grade. One of the things that I want to keep you guys just aware of is when we get new students and how many. And so since the end of February, the last week of February, we've actually had 5 additional students enrolled in the middle school. And so, that's always a good sign to be able to continue to bring them back. And a lot of these students have come even from out of district as well. And so it's a great sign that they're coming to Mount Angel. Spring sports participation. Last time I reported to you guys, those were kind of tentative numbers, and you see they went up 1 in baseball and 3 in track and field, but baseball numbers are strong. And, just similar to what we dealt with, we were looking at basketball, trying to get everybody playing time and opportunities to improve and grow is really just exciting overall. So we have a spring dance tentatively scheduled for May 6th, which I know our leadership students will be working hard to coordinate, and hopefully we can get enough chaperones to be able to give students that opportunity. 7th and 8th grade began SBAC testing. It says this week. It was actually last week when I wrote this, it was the current week. And 6th grade ELA just began today. Spring conference attendance was at 58% for us, which is, we typically see higher conference rates in the fall, a little bit lower in the spring, but just nice to have parents in buildings being able to interact with them and have them interact with our staff. So we were pretty excited. Miss Karcher and the STEAM class have been, some of you guys probably haven't seen it because it's on the other side of where the road is, but they've been working with different community partners to create some garden beds right outside. It's kind of like outside her classroom in between those walk areas in a greenhouse. And really that's an opportunity to just bring the importance of farming and agriculture, and talk about that with our STEAM students within the classroom environment and get some hands-on opportunities to see that in action. So she's been doing a great job, and so have her students. Last but not least, Oregon Battle of the Books was this weekend at our local library here. We had 5 students participating in that. And Sue Geck led that initiative for our school. They actually made it to the Elite 8. And so we were very excited. It was a little bit different than other formats because they were via Zoom, but really excited to be able to hold that opportunity for our students as well. And so that is the update from the middle school.
How many students were in Battle of the Books from NAMS? Do you know roughly?
It starts out pretty big and then it kind of narrows down to like a specific number of teams. So they took one team of 5 students. I think when we started though, it was maybe 17 students. And then I want to say it was somewhere around that number. And then it kind of narrows down in terms of how many teams you can take and kind of how they go through that process.
And do we know who our community partners are who help with the greenhouse?
Yeah, so we actually got some donations. Taylor Metal Products had given a donation from STEAM in particular. And then OSU, I believe it's the OSU Extension Program. I can double check on that. They also help with some of those. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments for Jared? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Peterson.
Well, I apologize right off the top with the audience having to look at the back of my bald head. Can't make for good viewing purposes at this point. So what's happening at JFK? As you heard Alex say, prom is actually happening this year, which is really kind of cool. It's on the 29th from 8 to 11 at Vanderbeck Valley Farms. And the theme for this year's prom is Under the Stars. So pretty excited to get out there and watch the kids partake in some dancing and overall listening of music. I think most of the time there's some dancing, but mostly eating, having a good time and fun with each other. Sports update, we've got 89 students that are participating in spring sports this year, which is almost literally half our school, which is phenomenal. Of softball, baseball, and track. That doesn't even include cheer right now, but they're not, this year I don't think they're doing a competition season, so they're working on, I think McKenna said something about a camp they're gonna run, another small camp for our littles coming in, so that'll be great. Something else that has been taking an enormous amount of time is accreditation. It's a beast of a process, and it happens every 5 years or so. And it literally takes everybody in the building. Typically what happens is a group of people will come out and they'll go through the school. They'll be there for about 2 or 3 days and ask a lot of questions. They come back together, have conversations with that. And then they talk with all stakeholders, so superintendent, board members, principal, teachers, parents. That's not happening this year, so all of that is on us as staff members. We're doing it virtually, so we had to rate ourselves in 3 different standards, which had, the largest standard had 12 indicators in it, and each indicator has 5 areas that you actually have to score and write a narrative for. We did that as an entire staff. We broke into 3 groups. And I thought staff did a wonderful job of scoring and writing the narratives. That's actually being submitted tomorrow. So I'm excited to see that process end. But then another one begins with 2 teachers and myself having to answer 12 questions. And that helps them kind of score the worksheet that he's gotten, our lead evaluator, Travis. And then we have a virtual visit, he and I, at the end of the month to do a little more conversation and collaboration. And then he has his report that's due beginning of May. So it's a lengthy process with it being virtual. But I'm excited it's almost done. It's nerve-wracking, just to say the least. I've lost a little bit of sleep over this. accreditation is a big deal, as we all know. And so it's one of those things that we have to do every 5 years. Forecasting, we have a small number of students that still need to forecast. Jared's kids down at the middle school, the incoming ninth graders have done a wonderful job of getting their forecasting done. We've got a handful of kids at the high school that just need to get it done, because we know how important that is to creating an accurate master schedule. So all kids can access the classes they want or they need. So that's super important. And we're super eager to get back to our weekly PD to prepare staff for the implementation of RTI, Response Intervention System, which we all know ensures high levels of learning for all students. We started that process. And that was teacher-led by Annie Herschel and McKenna Coons, where they were doing some PD first couple Wednesdays before we started with our accreditation process. And then that's been put back, that's been put on hold. We're going to start that again and have that conversation. Just preparing staff for what this is going to look like. It's really important that we have supports and extensions for kids. So the supports for kids for they're struggling, and extensions for kids who are getting it, and so they can extend their learning. So we're excited to get into that process again. Attendance, year-to-date attendance, as you can see there, it's interesting because typically this time of year you see 12th graders with some serious senioritis. And while that is happening a little bit this year, it's not as bad as it's been in years past. I can remember 2 years ago, I think seniors were down 72%. That's a number that just resonates in my head. And we're like, you guys you gotta finish strong. Something that's not in here that's likely gonna help with attendance is the announcement today that went out to families and to students about the opportunity to open campus again for lunches. But there's some criteria that students have to meet in order to be able to gain a lunch pass. For the remainder of this year, they have to have 85% attendance, 85% or higher of attendance. They have to have less than 15 total unexcused tardies for the year, and they have to be passing all of their classes for this third quarter. And they can then get a lunch pass. We'll have different color lunch passes as we move into next year. Next year, we're going to move that number from 85 to 90%, because we all know that 90% is regular attender rate, and that should significantly bring our regular attender rate up to where it needs to be. We all know that when students are attending on a regular basis, they're learning at a much higher rate. So a little teeth, I guess, if you will, instead of just saying, hey, anybody can leave campus, we'll have some criteria that says, we really want you to leave campus, but you quite can't yet. So what we're going to work with kids to get them there. How that looks for next year is we'll use for our freshmen, sophomores, and junior kids, we'll use fourth quarter numbers. So this is where we can talk to our kids saying, okay, if your numbers are not where they need to be for this rest of this school year, you can work on those numbers to get them where they need to be for next year. And incoming ninth graders will be a clean slate for those kids, and that's the way it should be. So as you can see with the early attendance, we're at 88%, ninth grade 89%, 10th grade 88%, 11th grade 89%, and then 12th grade is 86%. And what we don't see in here is the regular attender rate, which is the same, I believe was the same number as what it was last month when I reported about 62%. And the last but certainly not least, is that we are in the process, all of us are in the process of preparing to celebrate staff during Staff Appreciation Week in early May. We want to be cognizant of where we are with budget, but we also want to make sure that our staff are appreciated at the level they should be appreciated, and we're working diligently to figure out what that looks like. Could be barbecuing up some hamburgers or something. We don't know at this point, but we're working on it. Questions?
Dale, at the end of May with your accreditation, is that like the final, or is that like with deficiencies that you would have to correct?
Well, they'll give you, that's a great question. Thank you for that. They'll give you the deficiencies that you need to correct, but typically they'll say that you have accreditation for 5 years, but we'll come back and revisit maybe in a year or two and see where you're at with as far as the deficiencies that are there.
So the end of May is pretty much, they're handing you the accreditation again.
That we can put up on the wall and say, thank you very much for doing this. Yes, good question though.
Anything else? Thank you, Dale.
You're welcome.
And special services is Erica. Gordon. Yeah.
Mine's actually long this time. I'm gonna sit by you.
Oh, perfect.
See? People can hear me. Not look at my bald head.
You don't have to hold it.
Much as I wear my hair up, you'd think that I do. So I have, ended up putting 4 updates for you guys. I've been really trying to narrow down how much, my apologies, how much I bring to you all each month. Because getting all of the collections updates every month isn't always super fun. So trying to bring you more content than just ODE updates. So these are the 4 for this month. The big portion is going to be the House Bill 3499 update, letting you know where we're at with our wellness grant, although next month you're going to get even more details on that, where we're at with summer school planning, and then just a little snippet on our safe return to schools. So first and foremost is where we're at with House Bill 3499. Our district plan has officially been finalized and approved by ODE. It only took them like 10 months to get that done.
Erica, can you just remind me what?
Oh,
what-
yes, it's all
What is House
coming.
Bill 39?
Yes, it's coming. My short sarcastic version is that we are in ELD jail. That's my short version. Not very professional, but what that means is that we have not been seeing, and over time, the outcomes for our students who are English language learners. And because of that, ODE has done a couple things. They are giving us funds, which is great, but they're also putting a label on us, which is not so great, and then also directing how certain funds need to be spent. They're also really tying specific goals to how these funds need to be spent, and they're also digging into how we have spent our previous funds to look at perhaps, well, did we not spend funds correctly? So it's a really deep audit into our district, because we do have a high number of ELs and should be expecting more for the outcomes of our students. So it's not a good thing necessarily to be receiving House Bill 3499 funds.
How many ELs do we have in the district?
So we separate EL students differently. So students who are what we would call active ELs, the students who are like in program receiving active services. We have about 100, a little bit more, 110 students who have quote exited the program, but we still monitor their status. We have another additional 100, so a little over 200.
Okay.
So pretty significant.
Yeah, out of
portion.
600 and some. that's
Yeah,
a large-
significant portion of our district. And we do receive additional weighted funding for these students. So I think it's important to consider that as we make decisions around programming for our district, that this is a significant portion of our school district. And it's also important to remember that a student can be, like in our district, for example, Hispanic, but not an English language learner. So we even have a higher percentage of students who are Hispanic than an English language learner. So that number is even higher. The last report card showed that 48% of our district is Hispanic. So that's even higher than our, about a third of our students who are English language learners. The good news is that they are actually giving us money to hopefully see better outcomes for our students. We knew this designation was coming, and so we started this planning process in late spring of last year. And through a comprehensive needs assessment and a variety of other planning processes, and I had to submit different pieces throughout last spring, the summer and the fall, and you guys have seen most of those documents.
And based on the EL profile indicators, which we had to connect to, we ended up landing on 2 indicators, which you will see up here. I think it's also important for you all in the community to know that there's 2 different designations for House Bill 3499. There is transformation and targeted. Transformation is if you're identified both at the elementary and at the secondary level. Targeted is if you're just designated at one level. Probably set that off, sorry. We were only identified at the secondary level. However, in looking at our data, we really believe that the strategies that we need to put in place and the plan that we need to put in place really needs to be K-12. So we were very careful to select indicators that would have an impact K-12. Also keeping in mind that the majority of our ELs are at the elementary level, even though we were designated, targeted, if you will, at the secondary level. So 9th grade on track was one of the areas that we picked because of a variety of factors. One, we already know that this is something that we've been having a lot of discussions on at our board meetings, as we talk about in our admin meetings. How are we really going to be purposeful in doing that transition? And as we talk in our RTI meetings too, how can we, prevention is the best intervention, right? So it really ties nicely into some of those other things that we're doing. And then regular attendance. We also know this is something that has been on the minds and hearts of us as we're doing our data collection. We, though, want to be looking specifically at our English language learners. So looking at goal 1, so with the goal of increasing 9th grade on track, there's a really long goal here. If you want to know where the goal came from, if you're just looking for, something fun to do and you want to go on the ODE website, there's this comprehensive needs assessment called the ORIS. It's the Oregon Integrated Systems. You probably are familiar with it. Yeah. So they came up with a version specifically, they took that and they came up with a version specifically for English language learners. So the goals are from the ORIS for ELs and then tied to indicators. So that's where these are from. So this is part of our plan. Okay, next. So once we did all that, we actually got to get down to the nitty gritty and figure out, okay, what are those activities then that make sense within the context of our data that we really need to do K-12 so that we can see our ELs flourish. So some of those things are bulleted there. You can see more things posted on the job description, but really we need somebody who can research, design, implement, and carry out the goals of the grant, which is really looking at researching integrated ELD models. We have a variety of ELD models throughout our district, and they are different from year to year. They're different from building to building, and they're different based on the people, and they're different based on the numbers of students that we have. Which isn't a very good model for student outcomes. So we need somebody who can do the research to see what are other like-sized schools, districts doing, and then how can we, with the resource allocation that we have, research it, implement it, the professional development, all of those sorts of things. And then, develop the data, develop the systems. We also have another position that we're looking at, which you'll see next, collaborating with them. And then part of those two, you'll see with like the other bullets, the instructional coaching frameworks, elevating student voice, which is incredibly important, especially as we get into the secondary level. And then doing that gap analysis between our current standards, especially in like ELA and the ELP standards. What's that overlap? How can we embed some of those ELP, which are English language proficiency standards? How can we embed those into the general ed curriculum so that we aren't creating something separate and different? What are we already doing? Our teachers are already doing so much rich instruction. How can we embed that into what they're already doing? So that's something that the money will actually free up somebody to do this deep dive for us. The other goal for increasing regular attendance is really focused on family engagement, which we already know from our board meetings is that two-way communication, and really being able to have somebody who is bilingual to be able to connect with our Hispanic families, our English language learner families in their native language. And so part of this, though, you'll see in that the latter half there is that implementation decisions, really elevating them to their non-EL counterparts. And that's been a desire, I know, of Superintendent Stuckey. She's communicated that from the beginning, and I know that she has the support of our board, but we really need additional staffing to be able to make that happen and really get some of those systems in place. So we have, this would be a classified position, but there's a lot of work that is embedded with all of this. This person will also be able to support other students who, EL students who were not on track to graduate by getting that family support structure and connecting with other community resources. A lot of times our students who are like, well, I need to be home and babysit because like right now we know that family is, we're planting right now, right? And so they might need older sibling to stay home and babysit. So how can we need somebody who is connected with family resources. So we need somebody who can, really connect with same size districts who have the same demographics. How are they doing it? What are they doing well? And I also, we were talking about, again, engaging with EL students, elevating student voice, doing welcome walkthroughs of all of our buildings. So if you are bilingual, bicultural, and you walk in to this building, what about the building helps you feel welcome? Is anything representative of your culture in this building or at the district office or at any of our buildings? And taking some of our families through and getting their input too. And so really, if we want to accomplish these things, we need to, we're able to put this into action with some of these positions. So that, we're actually ready to do it.
Hey, and the funding, how many years will that work funded?
So it's 4 years, except this is technically year 1. But this year rolls over into next year is in bienniums. So the funding that we don't use this year rolls over into next year, which is great. So it won't be use it or lose it in year 1. It's essentially 2 years of funding. So we'll use it. I'll be much quicker on the next ones, I promise. So wellness, actually Cameron is going to come next month and really present on this. So I'm just gonna go over this real quickly. This is our 3rd out of 5. If you recall, or for those of you who are new, it was a 5-year grant up to $100,000. Max we could pull was $30,000, and it was like a 2-to-1 matching grant. So this is where we're at right now. And I will let Cameron go through all the details of maybe the next couple slides. I had mapped it out, but I'm being long-winded today. It's in your board packet if you want to see the details. I do want to let you know, maybe on the next one, there we go at the bottom, as we talk about staff celebration, that we do have in our budget to do a June lunch at the end of every year and celebrate everybody's hard work at getting healthier every year. So we do have that in our budget. Okay. Summer school. We finally got word, Christy got word that we do have summer school funds, and actually Mr. Brendan let me know that there is some potential for some community-based organization partnerships. So we're going to be searching that out to see what other pieces we might be able to partner with. So next, you have this in your, sorry, next, oh, sorry, I keep looking at Jill, like Jill,
Oh,
do
no,
the
it's me.
magic. You're like, so this is what we know so far, and it isn't a lot, but it'll look very much the same as it has in the past with ELL and migrant summer school, running along with our tier 3 students being the bulk of summer school, 4 days a week, primarily in the morning. Did I say 4 days a week? I feel like I said 4 days a week for 5 weeks. Then we're looking at the enrichment camps being more structured so that it would be lunchtime and then they'd be right after that instead of doing, they were just kind of scheduled when we could. So we're trying to be a little bit more cognizant of that and really more tight on the schedule, but we haven't gotten further than that yet. And then credit recovery, I think as you heard last time, will be on site. And then since there's additional monies for the high school grant, we're maybe toying with the idea of looking at that 8th to 9th grade transition. Again, that ties in really nice with the Household 3499 fund. So we're just trying to make the magic happen. And then this is just an FYI to let you know our T's have been crossed and our I's have been dotted, even though apparently COVID is over. Everything was submitted, but it's all done and it's on the website and it's in English and Spanish. And a huge thanks to our nurse, Amy, who really worked hard on our updating our COVID management plan, and then to Eva, who translated it all. And it is done. And hopefully we won't have to update that again. And I apologize for being long-winded tonight. I get one time, right? That was a lot. Any questions?
Just quick one on your summer school.
Yes.
Summer school, it says breakfast, lunch, and transportation. And then for enrichment, it just says after lunch. Is there going to be any transportation for the enrichment camp?
I don't
Are we-
know.
yeah.
We're gonna look at that grant to see what we can do.
Question.
I'm sure you and I will meet several times. You'll be the first to know, Mr. Brendan. Thanks, everybody.
Guys.
Report. Okay.
Probably nothing going on.
No,
Budget.
nothing at all.
Yeah.
Okay, let me- Okay, so I'll do my normal reports first. Okay, so first is the lunch. Let me get this below that. Oop. Okay, so pretty normal month when it comes to the lunch fund. You can see what we've gotten in. Again, we got some grants that we weren't expecting, that Stacy's done a really great job of collecting money each month for that. So that's definitely helping the bottom line. And then we have our reimbursement. So total revenues, 47,688. Just our standard expenses. You can see food costs is going up. And so our total expenses were 45,884. So our ending balance is 36,204. So just trending perfectly on the lunch fund. And then let's. Oops. Let me go find the next one. Is there a way for me to just switch my screen? Is that okay? And then here is financial summary. So for March, we got our county school fund money in, so you can see that 27,583. Our state school fund, before it got adjusted to what our remaining amount would be, is our last of the 536,037. You can see the next 2 months is the 466. That is based on just the state school fund and what we have remaining based on our ADM as of right now for this particular year. And then the 80,183 is just ESSER funds that we got reimbursed for some of our expenses. So our total revenue for the month was 666,329. And you can see that we're on track revenue about 91%. And then for expenses, salaries and benefits, we're back to what a normal month is. You can see our supplies, insurance, and so our total expenses for the month were 633,167, which is good. So we actually had more in revenue this month. So that really helped our ending fund balance move up a little bit. And I also went in and adjusted expenditures for the rest of the year to be closer to what is encumbered, what we know versus what it was, in previous years. And so these numbers will probably, at least the supply budget one, that'll go up maybe a little bit, but you can see that our ending fund balance right now is 345.45. So we're trending in a better direction than we have been. And so any questions on either of these reports before I go on the budget report? Okay, so how do I switch to another? This? Or do I have to stop sharing?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Okay, so this is a budget update. Most of this data is from Friday. I have had some updates as of today and I put those in there. So things are changing pretty rapidly in my world, it feels like. Some of this is just as a reminder. So again, we went over this, the average daily membership a couple months ago, and we were showing you the 3 or 4 different estimates we were working with. So we finally chose what ADMW we wanted to use for the budget for moving forward. We chose the 861.89. Whoops, and as a reminder, that is based on all of our current students moving up 1 grade, 45 incoming kindergartners, and an increase of 10 students. We met with associations and we all agreed collectively that one of the steps to increase our budget revenue is to get some of our students back. And so even though this is, we feel, not the most conservative approach, we felt based on everybody's buy-in that this was a safe route to take to get at least 10 kids back. And so then over there on the right-hand side, that just shows you what the breakdown is. It shows you where we're at today, or as of when this was made, our number of students. And even though it looks like there's 20 students more, it's just because we're losing a very small class this year and gaining a little bit higher of a class. So that is what we are budgeting based on, is the 861.89. As a reminder, we started all the budget stuff this year in February when Rachel and I started meeting. We were looking at about $1.2 million deficit, and it was a combination of an overall reduction of revenue and then an expense increase of about $400,000, which the majority of that was salaries and benefits. And so we've been working and meeting with staff members, doing some listening sessions, and really trying to show what we've done so far to help the budget. So I don't know if you haven't seen this, these are some of the things that we've done. So we've reduced our nursing FTE from 1.0 to 0.3, and then the dollar amount there is what the projected savings. And this isn't all dollar for dollar because some of this wasn't general fund, but just to kind of give you an idea of what's changing. We're gonna have 1 less custodian this year. If you remember, we hired 1 extra custodian this past year using ESSER funds to just help us get through this COVID. And so that was a temporary position that is no longer. We eliminated 1.0 FTE for behavioral intervention. We're planning on using about 50% of the remaining ESSER funds, which is as of right now about 300,000. We've decided to postpone the ELA adoption. We've eliminated general fund Trillium costs. So in the past, there have been some general fund costs when folks have met with Trillium, and we are now going to have them meet with students who qualify for OHP. And then students that have private insurance, we will provide them with other resources. And then the curriculum transfer every year, we transfer $35,000 into a fund to be used for curriculum during that year. And so we've committed not to do that this year unless we potentially can. And then the departments, they've done an incredible job of really deep diving into their budgets and seeing where they could reduce some of their budget. And so you can see there the different departments. That 31.7 is a reduction in Grad Alliance. We're going to use some other methods of credit recovery rather than the Grad Alliance. Office of the Principal, our technology budget, Superintendent's Office, which that number we actually increased. I just haven't updated the slide to 10,000. Board of Education, sports, we've decided no new uniforms this year. And then no national conference for AVID. And so I also put in here, like you can see in the parentheses, like what things are included in those budgets, because sometimes you might see a number and think that's a big number, but like for example, just use the school budget for St. Mary's. It includes their copier lease, the repairs and maintenance for any copier, office supplies, classroom supplies, the student information system. So there's a lot of things that are built in there that really aren't fun stuff that they get to use in their classrooms. It's really just to keep their building going. So anyways, these are the things that we've been able to find so far to reduce the deficit. Any questions on this? And Rachel and I look at this and we meet almost daily, it feels like, and just looking at where we can chip away at this. So because of that, I sent an email out to staff last week about some things that we found. So we're expecting some emergency connectivity funds of about $56,000. We don't know when they're coming yet, but they are to reimburse us for some laptops that we purchased or Chromebooks that we purchased out of the general fund earlier this year. And so I hadn't added that back into the budget because I don't know when that money's coming. But in one of our listening sessions, it was suggested, well, can we just use ESSER funds as a cover for that until we get paid on that? And so we're doing that, so that we took that off. And we also saw some savings from our LSP meeting. We've been able to move around some things on that and get our actual contracted expenses to be less. So as of when this was made, we're looking at a deficit still of about $236,000. So again, we're getting closer to where we want to be. And then any questions on that page? Sorry. No? Okay. And so thinking about 2022-23, some of the contingency needs that we might have are unknowns. We still have emergencies or unplanned expenses if we have any high needs move-ins. Our buses are aging, so we have the potential of one of them breaking down. We know one's already leaking, maybe major HVAC repairs. I know that, Marty is finding things as he's, going into the buildings that need repairs. We had a big sprinkler system repair this year. So some things like that are unknown. The other thing that I was really concerned about was the state school fund reconciliation from 2020-21. It just seemed like every time we get an update from the state school fund, it was bad news because our ADM had kept going down. But what I found out is that they actually build in some reserves when they go into reconcile at the end of the biennium. And based on that and the fact that Gail budgeted really well on terms of she budgeted that our transportation grant, for example, was going to be less than it actually was. we're actually going to potentially get some money back. The preliminary estimate, this is not confirmed, and we don't know until at the end of April, is that we're gonna get about $113,000 back. So that will go towards our ending fund balance, which is really, really great news. Because like I said, I was really concerned that we might have to pay, and so to not find out we don't have to pay, and then we're actually getting some money back is very exciting. And the other parts that we don't know is, will there be any changes at the state school fund? Right now our numbers are based on what they project the total enrollment to be next year. We don't know what's going to happen statewide. Maybe a bunch of kids will come back, maybe they won't. And so, that potentially could change what our per student revenue is. And another thing that we don't know is maybe we don't get back the kids that we're projecting or lose more students. So those are some of the things that we have to make sure that we keep contingency for. So these are some of the things that I'm still working on. We're still looking at department budgets to see if there's any additional cuts that could be made. We'll get the official state school fund reconciliation towards the end of this month, and that'll get paid out in May. We still don't have our IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act grant allocation, and that does pay primarily for some salaries. So those could potentially make some salaries go into general funds. We don't know about that yet. Each year, the Willamette ESD reconciles what we spent on the local service plan. And so sometimes we get money back. Last year was like $20,000. So again, that's every little bit helps. And then also we haven't heard word on the small high school grant. We have received it every year and it's been around 30,000. So we're hoping for that too. So these potentially, can chip away at that deficit that we've been talking about. So I feel like the last couple days have been better news. So it feels good that we're getting the good news. So anyways, any questions on this at all?
Just want to say I appreciate all your hard work.
Oh, thanks.
I'm very impressed with everything that you've been able to find to help chip away at that deficit.
Yeah. I'm happy to do that.
Anything else for Christy? Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, superintendent's report. And for those who are listening on Zoom, if you do want to address the board during the public forum session of the meeting, it's coming up after our superintendent's report, basically. So use chat to sign up for that. All right.
Okay, good evening, Chair Reedman and members of the board. Quite a few interesting things tonight to share with you. We always start with enrollment. We had no requests for transfers out from last Friday through the March board meeting, and no requests in from other districts. We added 2 students to Stride K-12. We are seeing transfer requests for next year, and it has increased by a handful since last month. We now have 11 requests for transfer out and 1 request for transfer in. And I thought that I would share with you the reasons that I am seeing. So these are the reasons for requests out. Childcare, older siblings already have transferred out of our district. A parent works at a school outside of our district, and more high school electives elsewhere. So those are the major trends. Any questions thus far? Well, the next part is a safety and accident report for the board, but I want to take this opportunity to formally introduce and welcome our new facilities director, Marty Butts. So this is Director Butts, and we are so lucky to have him here with us. He's doing great.
Chair
things.
Reedman, members,
Welcome,
thank you
Marty.
for having me.
Welcome. Do you have anything you wanted to share with us, or do you want to answer questions from us, or what do you?
Time and patience is my motto.
Okay. So you would like time and
I
we
would-
can't gift you
I
with
would-
time, but
I would love to say that Superintendent Saki and everybody in the district office has been wonderful to work with. I'm jumping in deep end. I'm learning the school processes, and their patience has been wonderful, along with all of the principals too. They've been absolutely wonderful to work with. I love the group of people here, and I believe that, you know, we have a really good school district here, and looking forward to being involved in the long-range planning. I've been reading about it, and, you know, I know we have our hurdles and to get over, but we'll get there. We'll get there, and I feel very positive about it. So, thank you. It was very nice meeting all of you.
You too. Well,
Formally, formally.
Thank you, Marty.
and you came to us from
Lake Oswego,
City of Lake Oswego?
City of Lake Oswego, yes.
Got it.
As the facilities lead for the city of Lake Oswego for 15 years. I'm also the facility manager for Yakima Products. I work 2 jobs, so if you want diversity, you got it.
And do you live close?
9 minutes away, I'm off of Barlow Road.
Oh, very
Oh.
good.
Yes,
I probably drive by your house on my way
yes,
to work.
yes,
Take Barlow Road to work. Good.
very nice.
Well, anybody have any other? Well, thank you
Thank
for
you.
the introduction and
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yes, and in the future, Director Butts can be the one to share this report, but he, like he said, he's jumping off into the deep end. I thought maybe it would be nice if I did that this evening. So a quick couple of slides on safety and accident reports for the year. We had a change in practice this year. Beginning last September, each school was required to implement monthly safety committee meetings, and in the past, it was a district-wide committee. The reason for this change really is so that we get into the habit of more quickly isolating when there are problems at each site, rather than having it go from person to person and maybe go through some red tape. We want to analyze that data monthly, looking for trends and get things fixed just as quickly as possible. The procedures that we have in place are that school teams review student and staff accidents, identify the cause for incidents, submit safety work orders if something is related to the incident and must be repaired. Minutes from the monthly meetings are submitted to Director Butts, our facilities director, for review, and the minutes are also posted in staff rooms. Administrators and custodial staff walk the facilities and grounds monthly, and at least annually, the safety committee needs to implement an extensive safety checklist, checking all classrooms, hallways, every possible space. So that is being implemented this year. And for those of you that maybe saw the board packet online, I had a little error. I transposed the wrong information. The number of student injuries is 12, not staff injuries being 12, and so forth for the rest of the month. So as you can see, our staff members are faring very well in terms of accidents. And these are pretty typical numbers for students, especially at elementary. They get a lot of bumps out at recess. So any questions on this? Okay. A staff appreciation update. So the first really important thing I want to say about the upcoming Appreciation Week is that in all capacities, every staff member in our district is a teacher. Every staff member. We celebrate all staff because we all teach and model in different ways for our students. And as Principal Peterson did mention, you know, we're finding ourselves in a challenging time because of budget constraints, but, you know, recognizing staff, acknowledging staff, and serving staff is free. So we will find ways to be able to do that, and everyone deserves to be acknowledged and served, I believe. And then finally, and this was alluded to by Erica Gordon, all staff appreciation gathering on June 16th. And what we're looking at is a way for administrators to serve the staff. What they've been used to are boxed lunches. We're thinking we'd like to have a barbecue where we are serving others. So that is what we're looking at, and of course paid for by the wellness grant. Any questions on that? Well, we have a lot of inquiries coming in about what is happening with the middle school administrative hiring timeline. So I thought I better share that with you. And there are 2 slides here with lots of dates and information. Staff and community message will go out Wednesday. The position closes on Friday. We have 19 applicants. That's a lot. Yeah, it's a good problem to have, right? So next Monday after school, I will have an optional staff listening session so that staff can tell me what it is that they're wanting to see in their next principal. I'll have a family and staff survey open for almost a week. On Wednesday, April 20th, I'm going to ask a team to help me with screening the applications. And I specifically want representatives from the school to help with that. April 25th and 26th, I put short interviews because what I'm really looking at there is those being conducted by myself, just 3 or 4 questions virtually with those that make it through the screening application process. And I would like to do reference checks twice on the candidates that move forward. So for those that will be moving forward in the shorter virtual interviews, I'm going to do reference checks. And then we will go for more comprehensive round 2 interview on Monday, May 2nd. It's going to take all day. I think when you have 19 candidates, you can pretty much guess that it's going to be an all-day affair. And I will do a second round of reference checks, a deeper reference check. The position will be offered hopefully on Wednesday, May 4th. And on Thursday, May 5th, we'll have a staff and community announcement. Can I answer any questions for
It's a
you?
very busy 2 weeks.
Very busy 2 weeks.
I like this process.
Thank you. The last part of my report is where we're at with the strategic plan. So a brief review of meeting number 3. We reviewed our priority areas again, which we had already selected: academic achievement, healthy students, healthy community, and facilities and departments. A quick review of the work that had been done before about what is our district's purpose. We began to discuss vision. What is our desired reality? And we got some feedback from a smaller committee who started working on a mission statement and got feedback from the entire committee on that. That's a work in progress. We're getting there. So I wanted to share with you a couple of pictures. This is a team discussing their assigned priority area out of the 4 that we have identified. And they were envisioning the desired reality for that priority area. The biggest question from that evening and the end of the second meeting was, are we satisfied with our current reality? We have plenty of data. We have great information from the survey, several questions about how people are perceiving our district. And when this question was posed, I got a huge no, we are not satisfied with our current reality, which is the answer that I was hoping to hear. So if we are not satisfied with our current reality, what is our desired reality? And that was really the work that we started heading into. We used a protocol called World Cafe, where one group starts and puts together some work, and then you rotate from group to group and leave your notes and feedback for them. So this is a team that's reviewing a draft vision statement from a different team and providing their feedback and questions on sticky notes. And then after a great deal of work, this is a group, the academic achievement group, that presented their final draft of their vision statements from their priority area, again, academic achievement. So it's coming along. Actually, we're getting close to tying things up. Our next meeting is tomorrow evening. And this is the really exciting part, because we're going to begin to connect the vision with the values, or the vision statements to the values of what is it that we're collectively going to commit to? What are we willing to say we're going to do this work? questions?
I'm tired just seeing all this work that.
It's-
Well, the 2 meetings I went to were like, I really enjoyed them. Felt really good. I liked the whole process. I've been to 2 of the meetings and it's so inclusive of everybody and, you know, all the data that we got, it's just been real enjoyable to be at those meetings.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hey, this is the portion, any board member reports, I should say, before I move on. Okay, moving on to public forum. So this is the portion of our meeting where anyone in the public can address the board. And I just want to mention that this isn't intended to be a conversation with the board. You're sharing information, and if there's a question asked that we can answer in the moment, we will, and if not, we can address it after the fact. So I'm going to read a statement. Individual comments are limited to 3 minutes. If more time is required, please submit comments or questions in writing. At this time, members of the public are invited to present concerns to the board. Speakers may offer objective criticism of school operations and programs, but the board will not hear complaints concerning individual school personnel. The chairperson will direct complaints to the appropriate means for board consideration and disposition of legitimate complaints involving individuals. So that said, we have one person signed up, Thomas Butch, who's here. So he'll go first, and then after that, anybody who wants to use chat to sign up, you can do so. So Thomas.
So I get to sit in the hot seat.
Yeah, you get to sit in the hot
That's
seat.
cool. All right. Thomas Butch, lived here a long time. Family's been here 6 generations, and there's 2 more generations after me. So anyway, and I actually read your email that you sent out. So I saw, you know, we're doing our budget problems there, superintendent. So I kind of, for what it's worth, since we have a rather large family that's related to everybody from Byers to Annans to Bocklers to Butches to everybody, right? I started checking and found 6 families that are relatively close to my family in relationships that had pulled their kids out of the school, or either did or decided never to bring them here in the first place, even though they lived in the district. And I said, okay, what's the situation? What do you plan on doing? Where do you go? And it looks like about, I would say about 30% of them, you'll see them back within the next year or 2. Because not because of anything bad at the schools they're in or where they went, most of them went to private schools, but it's because of monetary considerations. They have to pay to go to private school, and they're like, okay, why am I paying to go to this if I get the same treatment here? So I would say in the next 2-3 years, you'll see about at least a third of those come back. And eventually I think about 60% from talking to them will actually return, and close to a third will probably never come back. That's unfortunate. They decided, and it's not, and most of it's based on COVID and how the school and state kind of flexed, you know, they kind of pulled your arm behind your back and said, you're going to do this, that, and the other thing. And they didn't like it. They didn't want to have the masks. They didn't want to have, you know, they wanted the control because they were the parents, they were paying the taxes. So that's why they went someplace else. And as long as you don't come back, you know, as long as our illustrious governor doesn't come down and say again, you're going to have to wear masks again and do this and that, these people will probably come back. But if she comes down and says again, you're gonna have to wear masks and stuff, I'm thinking a lot of these people might not ever come back. Especially the ones that are going to, a lot of them are Catholics. And a lot of them went to Catholic school and these private Catholic schools. And if she pushes hard again for some kind of crazy COVID thing again, they're gonna say it's not worth it. They're not gonna come back. But like I said, I think about 66%, 70% of them come back. And that's 6 families just in let's say, nieces and nephews of mine. That's I didn't have the time to go farther now, but yeah, and they all had multiple kids that should have been here. So anyway, take it for what it's worth. My daughter's here and I plan on keeping her here. So, and from what I've seen, everything's been working fairly well. She comes back happy and excited to go to school every day at kindergarten. So other than that, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Thomas,
you.
very much. Yeah, and as a Boxler distant cousin, nice to see you, nice to meet you. Right, do we have anybody else signed up? No more. Okay. Right. And do we have anything else in this part? Okay, all right, so moving on to action items, the district calendar, so,
May I speak to that?
yes, please.
So the calendar has been brought before you both in January and February. Some adjustments were made based on feedback after the January presentation. The February presentation, we didn't have enough data from other districts yet to know where to put spring vacation. But then after that, many came in, and so we have adjusted spring vacation for the last week, I don't know, of March.
It's late.
It is late, but that is what most districts are doing. So that's the only adjustment that's been made since this was brought to you previously in February.
So if someone would be ready to make the motion, it's in your blue, the language is in the blue. on the sheet.
I move to approve the district calendar for the 2022-2023 school year.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion or additional questions? for-
So just maybe just additional discussion for Rachel. We reached out to a number of other districts in our area or throughout the state to figure out spring break.
Oh, yeah, I Googled as many as I could. Yes.
It just seems like it's late.
It falls like this every so often,
Every so
right, when you have that, but yeah,
It's like a late start to the month too.
Yeah,
But that was all I had.
thank you. Any other questions or discussion?
just as something that I talked with Rachel about is to see, and she agrees that in the future to try to balance out our trimesters for the elementary level instead of having a short first and third trimester and a very long second trimester, with the months going in between reports to parents to try to even those trimesters out as much as possible in the future.
That will be an excellent goal next year for me to be working on.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Wonderful. Okay, discussion items. Student representative on the board. Andy, do you have an update for us?
Yes, so I've been in contact with Dale, and he actually was able to email out the application to all sophomores and juniors. We already have one application that has been returned. The date that it's due is May 1st. And then after that, I'll actually be asking right now for a volunteer to help me with the interviews of our applicants. And then my expectation is to make the announcement of our student rep in the June board meeting. That way it'll give us a couple weeks to get those interviews taken care of. Anybody have anything to say on that timeline?
That sounds quite reasonable. So are you looking for one more board member to help? with it?
Yeah, I think we'll have one more board member as a part of the thing.
Seeing Teresa.
Yeah, I'd be
is
glad
good.
to help you with that.
Great.
And if anybody else wants to do it, we can flip the coins. We're good? Okay. All right, Teresa, you've got, so you and
Okay.
Andy will interview the students, and then are you envisioning coming back with the recommendation to the board in June then?
Yes, yes. So right now they're supposed to be emailed to Jill. And they're due by May 1st. So after the first, we'll, on the second, I'll touch base with Jill and collect their applicants. And then I'll talk with Teresa about setting up some timelines and reaching out to our applicants about interview times.
Good. Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you for leading that, Andy. I think it's going to be really valuable for everyone involved to have a student participate more closely with us. So thank you. Any other comments on that?
Just, will you hold like a second place in the event? Our
Absolutely.
first choice gets 2 or 3 months in and says, man, I don't want to do this,
It's not for me or because of
whatever else.
sports schedules or
Yeah.
whatever, life in general. Absolutely.
Can have like a
A
second place
first alternate.
placeholder.
Yeah,
That's
that's a really good
Just
idea.
as a thought to keep that stuff and have, this student, we can pull in.
An understudy word. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
second, yeah, second. Yeah, I like it. That's a
Great
really good
idea.
idea.
Yeah.
Good. Any other comments on that? Final item on the agenda, bonds, buildings and ballots conference. So Teresa and I and Rachel and Christy were all there on Friday, all day at the convention center. And it was really informative sessions, really informative stories shared by a number of districts on failing bond measures and then successful bond measures. So Rachel, did you have something you wanted to start off with, or?
Sure, for me, it was really important to get clarity even around the language, the vocabulary, and a better understanding of how formulas apply. But one of the things I really learned is how important clear visual information is for people. Simple, clear visual information, colors that people can relate to, that's something that they can grab onto and stick with. So there's plenty of work to do, but I'm glad, I'm relieved to say that I have much more clarity around it.
Okay, go ahead.
I would add that just the types of resources we have available to us to help us with the process, there are more than I was aware, and so that's really good to know. And you know, kind of piggybacking on a little bit of what Rachel said, not only the visuals, but also making sure that as a board and as a district, when we're going into this process, we can't have the end result like strictly in mind. We need to be open to what we hear from the public and align what we propose to pay for with what people are willing to pay for. If we don't do that, we're probably not going to be successful in a bond measure. So it's going to be really important to get input from a number of stakeholders, hear from people who are reluctant to pay more in taxes and find out what would they be willing to pay for. So really more opportunity to listen and engage with the community in a very overt, transparent, strong way. So I think it's going to be another opportunity for us to do a lot of community engagement, listening, and figuring out what it is that people want and are willing to pay for. So that's a really big takeaway for me.
And a lot of those things, both you said, you know, kind of build up, you know, what all this prep work, all these things we need to do beforehand so we can present a bond that we really think has a possibility of passing. And then what I like, probably one of those that I kind of, I'd say enjoyed the most was Rachel and I were both at that one about winning campaigns. And this gentleman, just the way, what are the things that you need to do? He had like, because that was like 10 steps for, or the keys to winning, 10 steps for what you need to do. If you want to win, here's your 10 things that you have to do. And as he's going through, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's doable. That's something that's reasonable. So it's like after we do all that other one, then we've got this more information as to what we're going to do then.
So it was very valuable, and I'm glad we were there, and
Yes.
I'm glad we had the opportunity to attend. Chrissy, do you have anything to add that you want to share?
No, you know, it was, the thought of a bond was very scary to me. Even after being in banking, you know, you think that you know stuff about that, and I'm really glad that I went. Very informative. I feel like it's much less intimidating, and we have a lot of good tools, and like you said, resources that are there wanting to help us. So yeah, feel much better about it.
Any other comments, any questions on that?
Going, I think it's a good thing for us to all understand, and
Yes.
it's not scary.
Yeah, it did.
It
It
makes
took
it-
a lot of
brings that
the
down a bit.
anxiety
Yeah.
out of it, not
Yeah.
completely, but it
But-
reduced my anxiety.
Understandable.
Yeah, the more you know,
Yeah.
the less scary it is. So yes, it's very good.
Yeah.
Anything else before I adjourn? Meeting adjourned.